शक्ति भारत
रौनक बहारा गुलिस्तान भारत,
हर जन का कल्याण भारत।
मतदान मतदान देने जाएंगे भारत के लिए, भारत के लिए।
Welcome to Khanversations. I'm Muqtedar Khan, your host, and today I have with me a very distinguished scholar, practitioner, and thinker, Dr. S.Y. Quraishi, who is a former bureaucrat who served in the Indian Civil Services, was the first Muslim chairman of the Election Commission of India. He is now a scholar with the Delhi University, and he has written several books, including The Myth of Population, about the myths about the growth of Muslim population in India. He is a public intellectual. So first of all, sir, welcome to Khanversation, and thank you for your 40 years of service to the country.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
So we are going to talk today about India's journey from independence till now. To all of those of you who are watching from India and those who are watching here from the diaspora and others, congratulations on India's 76th independence. This is the 77th Independence Day and 76 years of freedom from the British Raj. Before I go any further, please do the needful, that is subscribe to the channel, like the video. Quraishi Sahab, you have been a witness to some of the most exciting times that India has experienced in history, and probably half of India's in the post-independence era in the government itself. So in your view, what are the biggest challenges that India has overcome in the last 76 years that you think that all Indians should really be proud of as we reflect on India's independence today?
Yeah. Dr. Khan, I would like to point out that my age and the age of independent India is the same. I was born 2 months before India became independent. And in fact, I can take credit what Nehru and Gandhi took 30, 40 years. I took only 2 months to get India independent.
Your date of birth is the same as my mother's, June 11, 1947, isn't it?
That's right. So now, therefore, our history coincide, except that in the life of a person, 76 years is a lifetime. In the life of a nation, it is a very, very small period. We have seen India as a country which was extremely poor. We were going around with begging bowl. Every small country in the world was giving us charity donation. Everyone used to talk about PL 480, where we used to get wheat. So for our survival, we were dependent on all these things. And when on the positive side, when India chose to become a republic in 1950, 26 January 1950, the Western world was aghast. They thought we have gone mad because 84% of Indians were illiterate. There was extreme poverty. So we were socially divided. We were going through the throes of partition, and 565 princely states. So nobody imagined that India will bounce back so quickly and will prove the prophets of doom wrong quickly enough. Now, the 2-3 interesting things there. One, that our very first election in 1951-52 laid the foundation of a great democratic tradition. Fantastic election. They were the largest election in world history then. In fact, every election subsequently is the largest election, only it keeps getting bigger. Now, one important point I would like to point out, that when we chose democracy, we gave equal voting rights to women on day one. Now, if it may not sound important to us, it may not even strike us, but if I point out to you that it took USA, the greatest democracy on the planet, 144 years to give equal voting rights to women, and here was this poor country which gave it on the day one. UK, the mother of modern democracy. I have deliberately used the word modern democracy because ancient democracy was India itself and Greece. So anyway, England, UK took 100 years, and we took 1 day. We did it on the first day, and we have been through right. Now, from a very, very poor country who nobody took seriously, I remember we read when the Prime Minister of India visited the US, it will be a two-line report on the 10th page or 15th page. Nobody cared. What whether India? In fact, most Americans probably would not know whether India is a country and where is it on the map. But not anymore. The fact that we have progressed, we have overcome poverty, we are becoming a large economic power. We are there as the third largest, and in the next for 30, 40 years, we hope to become the largest economy. That's a very, very good development. However, the disparity in India is disquieting. We have become the third largest power, and the government and all of us keep trumpeting it. But the fact that 80 crore, 800 million people are being given free rations today for survival, what does it show? That poverty coexists with prosperity. Some people are becoming richer. In fact, 77 of India's wealth is concentrated in 1% of the population. We need to deal with that. So the fact that we have the money concentrated in a few hands, if we could have redistributive justice, that will be extremely welcome step. So on the whole, India is a country which is counted politically, militarily, economically. We have become very, very important, and we are going to play a more active and decisive role in the coming years.
Yeah, you're correct. I spoke with several economists, and they all point to the growing inequity and income inequality, and that is a global problem. Here too, in the U.S., we see that there is huge income inequality, and this is one of the byproducts of globalization, right? One of the things that globalization did was help eliminate poverty in many countries like China and India, but also created this disparity in wealth. But if you read the Indian Constitution, even the preamble says that India has socialist aspirations, a country where we want to treat everybody equally, if not wiping all the tears of all the people, at least most of the people. So, what changes have you seen in India's culture, India's political culture and value system, that we have now evolved into a pretty right-wing, business-friendly country where basically capitalism reigns?
Yeah. Um, uh, we were a socialist country for a long time, and only in the last decade or so, or 10, 15 years, we moved away from socialism to capitalism, which is why the disparity has increased. So, therefore, we are actually ours was a kind of a mixed economy. We were part socialist, part capitalist, which actually was a good model, and we need to reconsider because, uh, as I mentioned, 80 crores, 800 million people living on charity for free food on free food grain. It doesn't reflect very well on our prosperity, and therefore the figure, the third largest economy, is extremely misleading then. So we need to deal with that.
So one of the things that I've noticed is that India always seemed to have this feeling that India was a great country and a great civilization. And the other day I was reading Nehru's speech, Tryst with Destiny, in which he says that we will work hard to achieve our rightful place in the world. And now, of course, there is a sense of a mood of triumphalism in India, and this talk of India becoming a global leader, Vishwa Guru, etc. Is this new form of sort of what some people have described as masculine nationalism, this aggressive nationalism. How does that square with the fact that 80% of the population, or 80 crores in the population, 80 out of 140 crore people still need food to be sent to them freely? Unemployment is reasonably high. Underemployment is very high. The women are completely, 80% of women are not in the labor force. So how do these economic factors go with a nationalism of triumphalism?
Yeah, actually, India is full of contradictions. We keep seeing lately 25 CEOs of the top companies in USA are Indians, which
Yes.
shows that yes, Indians are bright people. They're talented, and their talent is recognized in a country like US. And to as many as 25 of the biggest companies headed by Indians, yeah. So that is something which is a great thing which has happened. But how did it happen? Because the leader then, Major Pandit Nehru, who is now derided by the current dispensation and very wrongly, who set up these institutions? The IIT, the IIMs, and the Indian Institute of Science, and we are the third or fourth country to be planning to land on the moon. ISRO, who set up the leadership then? The people who have vision, and because of a short-sighted political reasons, they're condemned as if they only did harm to the country. Whereas actually Nehru was the builder, the founder of India. And it's very short-sighted and small-minded of us to criticize him. He may have made mistakes. And of course, he's criticized for what happened in our war with China. Because
Sure.
he was a trusting man and who was let down and was betrayed. But then to keep rejecting all his achievement on the basis of that failure. And that failure actually took his life within a year or two. He died. So therefore, the fact that all chief ministers, prime ministers, have contributed to India's growth story has to be acknowledged. And Prime Minister Vajpayee had acknowledged it very profusely and very large-heartedly, which sadly is not happening now, which should be. Only in one statement I remember the Prime Minister Modi mentioning all them in some context, I forget when, but on a daily basis, the way we are told that history of India begins in 2014. Now, that is absolutely laughable.
So, as India becomes increasingly important, and there's no doubt, like for example, 2023 was a year in which India was the chairman of G20 as well as the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Only last year, India was the president of the UN Security Council. So India is getting a lot of recognition in the international arena, especially because the United States is trying to talk India or court India into an alliance against China. But with this international stature is also coming international scrutiny. And so what is happening now is that there are two India stories out there. One is the India story about GDP and growth and democracy. But then there is another story of Manipur and hate speech and religious discrimination. So in many ways, all of this is being attributed to the new vision of India that is being advanced by Hindu nationalism and Hindutva. And a lot of commentators from the West, in particular, academics, intellectuals, and many from India too, are portraying a very dark picture of Hindu nationalism as essentially a fascist movement. What is your view of Hindu nationalism, and how much of a threat is it? See, India is moving like a juggernaut towards greatness. Is Hindu nationalism facilitating it, or is it going to trip this juggernaut and basically undermine India's growth?
Well, it's a very difficult question to answer, but I would only say that unfortunately, for the last 20 years, it has become a winning electoral strategy. Polarize and win the election. Because, in fact, right wing politicians have talked about 80-20, 80 being Hindus and 20 being minorities. So, and obviously, 80 will always win, even if 50% of 80 gets consolidated, which is the effort. And the most effective strategy has been polarized through communal riots, lynching, all those things, which you may mention are becoming a blot on India. But to say whether internationally we are being scrutinized, I'm sure the whole world knows. In fact, once I asked a diplomat whether the very ugly situation in India is known to the Western world. And he laughingly he said, look, we have ambassadors of each country sitting in Delhi. What else do they do the whole day? Send reports. But despite all that, India has to be taken seriously because the world that we are discussing is actually a capitalist world. They have products which they have to sell, and India is the biggest market. Now, India actually, I had one calculated in the context of the election, it is 90 countries rolled into one. Now, if some country is unhappy with us for something and for religious intolerance, and they say, okay, we're right of India, let's go to Sri Lanka, let's go to Nepal, Bhutan, Pakistan, Iran, Afghanistan. Now, that's ridiculous because India is 90 countries into one. So, India is indispensable for the Western world, for the capitalist world, which is why whatever may be happening here, good or bad, India will love us or hate us, you cannot ignore us. So that is the situation, which is why India is playing a very active role politically also. Now, this year, India was chairing G20, and the fact that developed countries were all coming to India, and India was playing a leadership role. India has a prominent role in BRICS and Shanghai Cooperation Organization. So India has been playing a very active role internationally, and India is being taken very seriously because of its sheer market, its economic power, even if concentrated in few hands, but in overall, India is the third largest economy. India is the fourth, I think, the fourth defense force in the world. So people have to take us seriously. And now, the negative thing which you mentioned, I wish government could control because actually it is diluting the image of the government, and it is diluting its own great achievements in many other sectors. In various fields, India is doing extremely well. But what is being debated is Manipur. What is being debated is lynching, communal riots here, there. No, so actually, the leadership is harming itself and its own image and India's image by the diverting people's attention from our achievement and solid work to the undesirable and negative activities.
You know, American officials, including the president of the United States, are these days very fond of saying that India-US relations are the most consequential relations of this century, they say. And I think that India-China relations are, I think, the most consequential. If India and China become friends, then I think the 21st century will be the Asian century where these two countries will become the dominant economies in the world. And both will probably become, the quality of life will reach developed world status. But if these two countries remain hostile and God forbid head into a war, I think then both the countries will suffer, and this will continue to remain a Western and American century. So one of the things that we perceive is that when there are external threats, there seems to be a tendency for internal unity. So why isn't the threat of China uniting Indians so that the internal differences disappear? I've been following domestic politics. Manipur is burning, Haryana is burning, and when the government's party response. They say, oh, that is no biggie because even Rajasthan is violent and Bengal is violent. So apparently their answer to the two fires is this is normal, it's everywhere. So why isn't the country uniting in the face of a threat from China?
Well, yeah, you made an interesting observation. There are two, three things here. One, U.S. Attitude towards India. U.S. has to take India seriously. For US, we are indispensable because we are the only country who can be a bulwark against China. And for them, China is the biggest threat. And who can stop China? Not Nepal, not Bhutan, obviously India. So therefore, India has to be a little more assertive. India has been assertive, and US has been taking the country very seriously because India can afford to act pricey vis-a-vis US because they cannot do without us. So that's one thing. Second point which you raised is interesting that if India, China come closer, there are border tensions, no doubt, and there is a lot of criticism of the China having occupied some territory on which the government has inquired, and government has been under attack within the country for a long time on that. So at the same time, some sensible thing which has happened is that we have not allowed the border tensions to affect business between the two countries. So that's a very sensible thing. In fact, I was just watching television an hour ago, and somebody did mention that actually in the last 3, 4 years, in our business with China has only increased despite the tension. Otherwise, the nationalism would have required that boycott China. They have taken over our territory and don't do any deal with them, no business with them. But fortunately, they said these two things, defense and trade and commerce, have been kept apart, which is the right and mature thing to do. And also, there is a possibility like BRICS. BRICS is a very important organization coming up, and where India and China and Russia and Brazil and South Africa are a combination. And there are many countries of the world making a beeline to join this movement. So the fact that India and China are likely to be working together, and Shanghai Cooperation Organization, India is one of the countries with China. So all these institutional mechanisms exist, and they are only becoming stronger. And I think as soon as we can settle our border disputes, which we keep trying, surely China is the aggressor here and very unreasonable, and we haven't made enough noise, which may be out of farsight or whatever. But that needs to be resolved, and we have to progress together. Now, will that affect our relations with US? It might, because US is giving importance to India because we are a safeguard against China. But if China and India become close together, then the USA will become quite redundant, I would like to say.
Yeah. If you look at the forecast of the global economies, it's going to be China, India, US, Indonesia, Britain, France, etc., will be out of the top 10 economies in the world in less than 20 years. So this is going to be, economically speaking, it is an Asian century, undoubtedly. Quraishi Saab, you've been the election commissioner in India. It's one of the biggest, I guess, public events, you could argue, that happens. So you have seen it all from inside, and I was very pleased to see that after the Karnataka election, no one came out and saying that the election was rigged or fake or this or that, and all parties accepted it very straight up without any questions about the legitimacy of the elections. But there are still voices that I see, especially here in the US, who talk about Indian elections are not exactly fair. What is your view on that, sir, about Indian elections? How fair and free are they?
I had written a book in 2014 on the Indian election, and it was titled "An Undocumented Wonder:
Yeah.
The Making of the Great Indian Election." Maybe during the program, I'll display the book on the screen.
I will show it to. I'll show it to the audience, and I have a link to the book in the video's description.
Yeah, good. So, an undocumented wonder: the making of the great Indian election, where I have described how the biggest show on earth, in fact, the term biggest show on earth was coined by New York Times. And I have given lectures all over the world, and most of the people have requested that I speak on how the biggest show on earth is assembled. And you said that one of the largest events, actually, it is the biggest, not only the biggest election in the world, it is the biggest management event of any kind in the world. You know, where now when we have to conduct elections, we have to reach 140 billion people. We have to find those who are 18 and eligible to become voters. We register them, we take the pictures, we put them on the electoral roll, we give them their voter identity card, and in 1 million polling stations, we arrange for them to come and poll conveniently, safely, without any. There used to be law and order issues, there used to be poll day murders once upon a time, but all that is history. So Indian election is regarded as a marvel. And if America says that they're raising questions, I think it is the other way around. Since 2000, Florida election, I have been asked by Americans many times to come and conduct their elections, because our elections have never been challenged. And imagine in the last election, the incumbent president, he says if he loses, he questioned the election before the results, before the election. Now, this doesn't happen in India. People have raised questions about EVM, VVPAT, but that is only to improve the transparency. But no election has ever been challenged. In fact, in one of my presentations, and I'll share that picture with you, I'll show you a picture of two leaders who were chief ministers of state of Himachal Pradesh at different times. So one is a winner, one is a loser, and look at the body language. They're sitting together happily and smiling and laughing. Now, this is the biggest statement on the fairness of India's election. The loser accepts with dignity the people's verdict.
Yeah,
There have been
even Prime Minister Modi tweeted as soon as the Karnataka elections were announced.
Yes, in fact, I'll share with you not one but two pictures which you may please incorporate in this. Even Prime Minister Modi in 2014, whatever he may have said about Dr. Manmohan Singh during the election campaign, but as soon as the results are out, he called on Dr. Manmohan Singh with a bouquet, and the bonhomie between them. They walked inside and compared notes. It is fantastic. Can you imagine that happening between Trump and Biden?
No, not at all. Biden wants to take him into the backyard
Also,
and wants to beat him up.
Yeah. Yes. And you mentioned the word Vish Guru. While India is trying to be a Vish Guru, Election Commission of India is acknowledged as Vish Guru already. And I'll give you a proof. You know, in 2011, when I was the CEC, we set up an institute called India International Institute of Democracy and Election Management, basically to train our own staff, which is 12 million, by the way. 12 million is our staff, all government servants who conduct great elections year after year.
It's bigger than Netherlands. Bigger than Netherlands.
Yeah. Now, we set up this institute in 2011, and in 11, 12 years, 108 countries have trained from that institute. And not the students coming in, but top management of the election commission, including chief election commissioners. Now, the fact that they are all making a beeline to learn for elections from India makes us a Vish Guru. We don't have to say it. We don't have to trumpet it. It is there for everyone to see.
Sir, you have written a book about the myth of the Muslim population, and you have also engaged in dialogues with the RSS. I was wondering what was happening with that, because there was a proposal to even meet Prime Minister Modi on this particular issue. But overall, a lot of people are very concerned about religious minorities in India. Uh, what do you think are the challenges that Indian Muslims face, both within the community and from the rise of Hindu nationalism? What is your advice to them?
It is true that the Muslims are in a very tight corner these days. And as I said, it is part of an electoral strategy because this is the only winning strategy. And even if they don't genuinely mean to be anti-Muslim, but anti-Muslim sentiment being whipped up, if it polarizes the community, then it leads to one party winning elections. So it will continue. Unfortunately, the country hasn't found a counter to that. Uh, there is a hope. The hope is now same. You mentioned Karnataka election. Karnataka election, the way the ruling party was defeated and very badly, and that will also I would also like to mention that many times I've been questioned about the reliability of our EVM, electronic voting machine. And my answer has been, look, if EVM could be manipulated, BJP would not have lost West Bengal,
Yeah, Karnataka.
Punjab, Himachal, and now Karnataka.
And even Goa, it's Delhi.
You know,
Delhi,
they
yeah.
did not, Delhi, they did not spare any effort, and despite that, and in the Karnataka election, they even went to a religious appeal. But Jai Bajrang Bali, after turning, which is a violation of all laws of the country. And somehow the top leadership did it and got away with it. Yet people rejected them. Because I think there is a fatigue factor also. Some people are really getting tired of it. And if you see, lots of the media is, of course, compromised. The Godi media is a very beautiful expression for 90% of the media. But the people who are fighting against all this are not the Muslims, but secular Hindus. And there's many. All the YouTube channels, whole lot of YouTube channels, the kind of language they're using, strong language against the government, and for fighting for India's secular character, they are all led by Hindus. And high caste Hindus, the Brahmins, so which is the hope. And I'm optimistic because I have often said that India is secular by its very character. India is secular because Hindus are secular. And I've been questioned, in fact, some time ago, a Pakistani journalist asked me that you keep saying that, what is the proof? I said, I'll tell you the proof. That India was partitioned in the name of religion.
Yeah.
When Pakistan became Islamic Republic, India could have easily opted to become a Hindu Rashtra then, and nobody would have batted an eyelid. But our Constituent Assembly, with 83% Hindus and mostly high caste, unanimously opted to make the country secular. So that shows, because basic ethos of Hinduism and Hindus is secular, and that is where the hope is. Even now, for instance, you will recall the horrors of partition.
Yeah.
After millions of people were killed or displaced, but within 5-10 years, people got over it. They forgot, and then there was Bonami again. So if that tragedy of that level could be forgotten and could be left behind, I'm sure this is a passing phase, and this too will pass.
This is the issue that you raised is very critical. So, for example, I always compare with Malaysia, which is only 65% Muslim. And yet there is parties there who want an Islamic state in Malaysia. So the question is, if you have a country which is 80% Hindu, and they want a Hindu Rashtra, for Muslims, in order to oppose that on grounds of secularism and pluralism, Muslims should, at least Indian Muslims, should be opposed to theocratic and Islamization initiatives in other parts of the Muslim world, because otherwise it appears as if Muslims want secularism and pluralism only when they are in minority and not when they are in majority. Sir, you have been very candid and very forthright, and I once again want to thank you for your service I'm delighted that I could speak with you. And I want to wish you, your family, and everybody else once again happy Independence Day. And so thank you very much for joining me on Khanversations.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure talking to you, Dr. Khan.
Thank you.